The room was not meant for anything special that afternoon. It was one of those places people passed through without thinking much about it. A soft hum of voices filled the air, mixed with the clinking of cups and the quiet scrape of chairs against the floor. Some people were there to rest for a few minutes, others were waiting for someone. A few were just passing time, staring at their phones or watching the light move across the walls. In one corner of the room sat an old piano. Its surface was worn and dull, showing marks from years of use and neglect. Most people barely noticed it anymore. It had become part of the background, like the walls or the floor. Sometimes someone played a few simple notes on it, nothing that made anyone stop or listen. It was there mostly for decoration, a reminder of something that once mattered more. That day, a person who worked at the place had been playing soft background music on the piano. The playing was polite and careful, meant to fill the silence without demanding attention. People talked over it freely. No one felt the need to stop what they were doing. The music was pleasant, but easy to ignore. Among the people in the room was a woman sitting alone near the middle. She had arrived quietly and taken a seat without drawing attention. Her clothes were simple and neat, nothing that stood out. She carried no sign that she was different from anyone else there. If someone had tried to describe her later, they might struggle to remember her face clearly. She blended in, just another person passing through. She sat with her hands folded in her lap listening. At first, she did not look toward the piano at all. Her eyes were focused somewhere else, as if she were thinking about something far away. From time to time, her fingers moved slightly, pressing against each other, then relaxing again. It was a small movement, easy to miss. As the minutes passed, the background music continued. A few people came and went, chairs scraped, cups were refilled. The noise level stayed the same, comfortable and low. Nothing suggested that the moment would become memorable in any way. Then, without hurry, the woman stood up. She did not rush. She did not clear her throat or raise her hand. She simply rose from her chair and walked toward the piano. At first, no one noticed. A few people glanced up briefly, assuming she was just passing by. Someone shifted in their seat. Someone else laughed softly at something said across the room. When she reached the piano, she stopped and waited. The person who had been playing noticed her only then. The music slowed and came to a gentle stop. There was a short pause, the kind that happens when no one is sure what comes next. The woman spoke quietly. Her voice was calm and respectful. She asked if she could play a tune. It was a simple request. She did not explain why. She did not smile or apologize. She just asked. The person at the piano hesitated for a moment. This was not part of the plan. There was no schedule for guests to play. But the request did not feel rude or demanding. It felt honest. After a brief pause, the seat was offered to her. A few people nearby looked up with mild interest. Others barely reacted. Someone leaned back, expecting nothing more than a short, awkward attempt at music. Another person glanced at their phone. Again, already losing interest, the woman sat down at the piano bench. She adjusted it slightly, pulling it closer. Her movements were slow and careful, as if she did not want to disturb the room any more than necessary. She placed her hands in her lap for a moment and took a quiet breath. The room did not go silent. Conversations continued. A chair moved. A cup was set down. No one told anyone else to be quiet. There was no reason to. She lifted her hands and rested her fingers lightly on the keys. She did not begin right away. For a few seconds, she simply sat there, looking down. Her shoulders rose and fell once, gently. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary moment. A guest at a piano, nothing more. People nearby exchanged quick glances. Someone raised their eyebrows, as if to say, "Here we go." Another person smiled politely, ready to listen for a few seconds before returning to their own thoughts. No one expected silence. No one expected to remember this moment later. The woman pressed her fingers against the keys, just enough to test their feel. A few soft sounds came out, not yet a melody. The notes were quiet and unsure, like a question being asked without words. Still, most people did not pay close attention. They had heard this before, short attempts, simple tunes, nothing worth stopping for. The woman shifted her hands slightly, finding her place. Her posture straightened, but not in a showy way. It was natural, like someone settling into something familiar after a long time away. She paused again. Somewhere in the room, someone laughed softly. Someone else stood up to leave. Life continued as usual. Then she began to play. The first notes were gentle and slow. They did not demand attention. They did not rise above the noise right away. At first, they blended in with the sounds of the room, almost getting lost. But there was something different in them. Not loudness, not speed, something harder to describe. One person near the piano stopped talking mid-sentence. Another lowered their voice without realizing it. A few heads turned slightly, not fully, just enough to listen while pretending not to. The woman's hands moved with care, not rushing, not showing off. Each note seemed placed on purpose. The tune was simple, but it felt steady, like a quiet walk taken with confidence. The room began to change, slowly, without announcement. A conversation faded. A phone screen went dark. A cup paused halfway to someone's mouth. The woman kept playing, unaware or unconcerned with the small shifts around her. Her eyes stayed on the keys. Her face remained calm, almost blank, but there was focus there. Deep focus, still. No one expected what was coming. At this point, the music was pleasant, nothing more. People were listening now, but casually. Some nodded along without thinking. Others leaned back, settling in for what they assumed would be a short tune. The woman did not look up. She played on. And as the melody slowly took shape, something inside the room began to hold its breath. This was only the beginning. No one knew it yet, but the ordinary afternoon had already slipped away. What remained was a moment just starting to open, quiet and fragile, waiting to be noticed. The music continued, slow and steady, moving through the room like a quiet breath. At first, it stayed simple, almost careful, as if it did not want to scare anyone away. The notes rose and fell gently, giving people time to notice without forcing them to react. The woman's hands moved with ease now. Whatever hesitation had been there before was gone. Her fingers traveled across the keys in a way that felt natural, like they remembered something her mind did not need to explain. She did not look around to see who was watching. She did not lift her head. She stayed with the piano, as if the rest of the room no longer existed. One by one, small sounds faded. A conversation near the window stopped. Two people who had been talking leaned closer together, not to whisper, but because neither wanted to speak anymore. Someone who had been tapping a foot to the background noise went still. The room was not silent yet, but it was changing. The melody grew a little stronger, not louder, just clearer. It began to take shape, like a story slowly being told. There was a sense of direction now, a feeling that the music knew where it was going, even if no one else did. A few people shifted in their seats, turning their bodies toward the piano. It happened without thought. They were not deciding to listen. They were simply being pulled in. The woman's shoulders relaxed as she played. Her breathing matched the rhythm of the tune. At times, her fingers moved so lightly it seemed the keys were meeting her halfway. At other moments, she pressed a little deeper, giving weight to certain notes, as if those moments mattered more. Someone near the back of the room frowned slightly, not in anger, but in focus. They were trying to place the tune. It sounded familiar, but not in a clear way, like something remembered from far away, half hidden by time. The music did not rush to reveal itself. It took its time. A person who had been standing near the exit stopped reaching for the door. Their hand rested there, unmoving. They listened, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. The woman at the piano shifted her hands again, moving into a new part of the melody. This section felt deeper. The notes carried more feeling now, more weight. The room seemed to lean toward the sound, for the first time. The music rose above the remaining noise. Cups stayed on tables, chairs stayed still. Even the air felt quieter, as if it was listening to. People who had come in late paused when they noticed the change. They did not understand why everyone was so quiet, but they felt it. They lowered their voices without being asked. Some chose not to sit down at all. The woman played on, steady and calm. Her face showed little emotion, but there was something in her stillness that held attention. She did not perform for the room, she played for the music itself. That made all the difference. As the melody unfolded, memories began to rise in the listeners, though no one spoke about it. One person thought of long drives taken years ago. Another remembered a quiet moment from childhood. Someone else felt a sudden tightness in the chest, without knowing why. The tune was doing something gentle but powerful. It was opening doors people had not planned to walk through that day. The woman's fingers moved faster now, not wildly, but with purpose. The rhythm became more confident. The melody circled back on itself, repeating parts in a way that felt comforting, like a familiar path. A man near the piano swallowed hard and looked down at his hands. He had not expected to feel anything. He had come in tired, thinking only about getting through the rest of the day. Now, He felt something shifting inside him, and he did not know what to do with it. The room was fully focused now. No one spoke. No one moved. The music filled the space, not by force, but by invitation. The woman leaned slightly forward as she played a softer passage. The notes became lighter, almost fragile. It felt like the music was whispering something important, something that should not be interrupted. A few people held their breath without realizing it. The tune slowed, then gently climbed again. Each rise felt earned. Each pause felt meaningful. There were no wasted sounds. Someone near the front wiped at their eyes, surprised to find them wet. They laughed quietly at themselves, embarrassed, but did not stop listening. The woman's hands moved with quiet confidence. There was no doubt in her playing now. Whatever this tune meant, she knew it well. As the melody continued, a sense of shared experience settled over the room. These people had arrived separately, carrying different thoughts and worries. Now, they were connected by the same sound, the same moment. The piano itself seemed to respond. Its worn keys produced a warm, full sound, richer than anyone expected from such an old instrument. It was as if it had been waiting for this kind of touch. The woman played through another turn of the melody, adding small changes, subtle shifts that made the tune feel alive. Nothing felt copied or repeated without reason. The music breathed. A person standing near the wall closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them. Another leaned forward, elbows on knees, completely absorbed. The woman did not look up. She stayed with the keys, her focus unbroken. The tune reached a point where it could have ended. Many songs would have stopped there, but she did not stop. Instead, she guided the melody into something deeper, something that felt like a turning point. The sound grew fuller, stronger, carrying more emotion than before. Not loud, but firm. The kind of strength that does not need to prove itself. The room felt smaller now, closer. People sat or stood as if drawn together by an invisible thread. A sense of anticipation settled in. Whatever this tune was, it was not finished speaking. The woman's hands moved with certainty as she entered this new section. The notes fell into place, one after another, building something powerful and calm at the same time. The listeners felt it. Even if they could not explain it, something important was happening. And still, the woman played on, unaware of how deeply the room was listening, or perhaps fully aware and choosing not to acknowledge it. The ordinary afternoon was gone now, replaced by something rare and fragile. No one dared to interrupt. The silence between the notes grew just as meaningful as the notes themselves. The tune continued, carrying everyone with it, deeper into a moment none of them would forget. This was no longer just background music. This was something else entirely. And the room waited, fully awake, for what would come next. The music moved into a new space, one that felt deeper and more serious. The notes no longer floated gently. They carried weight now. Each sound landed with meaning, as if it had something important to say and did not want to be ignored. The woman's hands pressed the keys with more confidence. Not force, but certainty. Her fingers knew exactly where to go next. There was no doubt, no searching. It felt as if the tune had been waiting inside her, patient, ready for this moment. The room was completely quiet now, not the polite kind of quiet, where people are holding back out of respect. This was different. This was a stillness that came naturally, as if sound itself had decided to step aside. No one checked their phone. No one shifted in their seat. No one coughed or cleared their throat. The air felt thick, full of attention. The melody slowed, then dipped into lower notes. The sound grew warmer, fuller, wrapping around the room. It felt like the kind of music that carried memory inside it. Not one memory, but many, layered together. Some listeners felt a sudden ache in their chest. Others felt their throat tighten. A few did not know what they were feeling at all, only that something inside them was moving. The woman leaned slightly closer to the piano, her shoulders rounding just a bit, as if she were protecting the sound. Her eyes stayed on the keys, but her face softened. There was emotion there now, quiet but real. The tune shifted again. A familiar phrase appeared in the melody, clearer than before. This time, several people recognized it at once. It was not a popular song everyone knew, but it was something many had heard before, long ago. In moments that mattered, a sharp breath was heard from somewhere near the wall. Someone in the front row slowly sat back, eyes wide, as if realizing something too late. The woman did not pause. She let the recognition settle on its own. The melody rose, not suddenly, but steadily, building feeling with care. Each note seemed connected to the next, like steps leading somewhere important. One person pressed a hand against their mouth. Another closed their eyes tightly, as if trying to hold something in. The music was no longer just being heard, it was being felt. The woman's hands moved faster now, but still controlled. The rhythm grew stronger, more sure of itself. There was pain in the sound, but also comfort. Loss, but also understanding. A listener near the back felt tears slide down their face before they realized they were crying. They did not wipe them away. There was no shame in it. No one was watching anyone else anymore. The room had become one shared space, held together by the same emotion. The piano answered the woman's touch with surprising strength. Notes rang out clear and full, filling every corner. Even the worn keys seemed alive. The tune reached a moment of tension. The notes climbed higher, closer together, creating a feeling of waiting, of something about to break open. People leaned forward without realizing it. Hearts beat faster. Breaths were held. Then the melody turned. Instead of breaking, it opened. The sound softened, spreading out, giving space again. It felt like relief after a long silence, like letting go of something heavy that had been carried for too long. A quiet sob escaped from somewhere in the room. It was not loud, but it was real. No one reacted. No one judged. The woman's face showed more now. Her mouth trembled slightly, though she kept playing. Her eyes shone, but she did not look away. She played as if she had nowhere else to be, as if stopping was not an option. The melody repeated itself once more, slower this time, more gentle. It felt like saying goodbye. Someone whispered a single word under their breath. Too quiet to understand. The woman's hands slowed. The notes stretched out, giving each one time to settle before the next arrived. The space between sounds grew larger, heavier. The room felt frozen. This was the point where many people realized they were witnessing something rare. Not skill alone, but honesty. The kind that cannot be practiced or planned. The music dipped again into lower notes, grounding itself, then slowly climbed back up. It was steady now, calm, accepting. A listener near the piano noticed their own hands shaking slightly. They folded them together, trying to stay still. The woman's breathing was deeper now. Her shoulders moved with each breath, rising and falling with the music. She reached the heart of the tune. This was where everything came together. The notes were clear, strong, and full of emotion. They did not rush. They did not hide. The room seemed to lean in one last time. The final part of the melody began. Though no one knew it was the final part yet, it carried a sense of closure. Gentle but firm. Tears were wiped quietly. Hands rested against chests. Eyes stayed locked on the woman and the piano. The music slowed even more. Each note felt like a heartbeat. The woman's fingers pressed the keys with care, as if each sound mattered deeply to her. The melody began to fade, not ending yet, but preparing to. The room was so quiet that even the smallest sound would have felt too loud. And still, the woman played on, holding the moment, guiding everyone toward whatever came next. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence was waiting, and the final notes were close. The last note did not end suddenly. It faded slowly, like a breath being released after being held for too long. The sound hung in the air for a moment, then slipped away. The woman's hand stayed on the keys even after the piano went quiet. No one moved. The silence that followed was deep and full. It was not empty. It felt heavy, like something important had just passed through the room and was leaving behind a trace of itself. The woman lowered her hands at last and rested them in her lap. She did not look up right away. Her shoulders dropped slightly, as if the effort of holding everything together had finally eased. Still, no one spoke. A few people took careful breaths. Someone swallowed. Another shifted just enough to ease stiff legs. But even that small movement felt loud. The woman stood up slowly. The piano bench made a soft sound as she stepped back. That sound seemed to sharpen the quiet, and a few people flinched without meaning to. She turned toward the room. For the first time, she looked at the people who had been listening. Her eyes moved from face to face, not searching for approval, not asking for anything. She looked calm, but tired. The kind of tired that comes after something deeply personal has been shared. A few seconds passed. Then someone near the back began to clap. It was hesitant at first. Just two hands coming together once, then again. The sound felt unsure, almost wrong, as if applause might break something fragile. The woman did not react right away. Another person joined in, then another. The clapping grew slowly, carefully, like people testing whether it was allowed. Soon, the room filled with applause. It was not loud or wild. It was steady and sincere. Some people clapped with tears still on their faces. Others nodded to themselves as they clapped, as if agreeing with something they could not put into words. The woman gave a small nod in return. She did not smile widely. Her lips pressed together, and she took a slow breath. The applause faded on its own, just as naturally as it had begun. When it ended, the room did not rush back into noise. Conversations did not start up right away. People stayed quiet, still holding the moment. The woman cleared her throat softly. "I'm sorry," she said. Her voice was gentle, almost unsure. It sounded different from the way she had spoken before she played, quieter somehow. "I didn't plan to play that," she continued. "I heard the piano, and I just felt like I needed to." She paused, choosing her words. "That tune means something to me," she said. "I didn't think anyone else would recognize it." A few people nodded. One person whispered, "I knew it," though it was unclear what they meant. The woman looked back at the piano for a moment, then at the room again. "It was played at a time in my life when everything felt uncertain," she said. "Someone close to me used to play it when things were hard. When I hear it, I remember that I wasn't alone." Her voice wavered slightly, but she did not stop. "I haven't heard it in a long time," she added. "Today just felt right." She did not say more than that. She did not explain who the person was, or what had happened, or why the tune mattered so much. She left those details untouched, as if they belonged only to her. The room stayed quiet, respectful. Someone near the front spoke up softly. "Thank you for sharing that." Others murmured agreement. The woman nodded again. She looked relieved, as if she had been holding something in and had finally set it down. She stepped away from the piano and picked up her bag from where it rested near her chair. Her movements were unhurried. There was no rush to leave, but no desire to stay in the center either. As she moved through the room, people made space for her without being asked. Some met her eyes and smiled gently. Others placed a hand over their heart or gave a small nod. She returned to her seat and sat down quietly. Life began to return, but slowly. Someone exhaled deeply and leaned back. A pair of friends exchanged a look, both knowing they had just shared something unexpected together. A person near the window wiped their face and laughed softly, embarrassed but lighter. The person who had been playing earlier sat back down at the piano, but did not play. The keys stayed silent. Conversations restarted, but they were different now. Voices were lower. Words were chosen more carefully. People talked about the tune, about where they might have heard it before. Some spoke about memories it brought back. Others simply said it made them feel something they had not felt in a long time. The woman stayed seated, listening to the hum of the room. She did not join the conversations. She looked out ahead of her, thoughtful. Someone nearby leaned over and said quietly, "That was beautiful." She smiled then, a small, honest smile. "Thank you," she replied. A few minutes passed. People came and went again, but they walked more slowly now, as if the room had taught them something about pausing. Eventually, the woman stood up once more. This time, people noticed right away. She slung her bag over her shoulder and took one last look at the piano. Her expression was soft, almost grateful. She walked toward the exit. No one stopped her. No one asked her to play again. They understood that the moment had been complete. As the door closed behind her, the room seemed to hold on to the feeling she left behind. The piano sat quietly in the corner, unchanged, yet somehow different. People knew they would talk about this later. They would tell others about a day when a stranger sat down and played a tune that made time slow down. Some would remember the notes, others would remember the silence, and all of them would remember how it felt to be part of something real, shared, and unplanned. The afternoon moved on, but the room was not the same. Something had settled there, gentle and lasting, waiting to be carried forward by everyone who had listened. The room slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but something about it felt different now. The sounds were the same as before: voices, footsteps, the soft movement of chairs, but they carried a gentler tone. It was as if everyone had agreed, without saying so, to move more carefully. People stayed longer than they planned. Some sat quietly, staring ahead, replaying the music in their minds. Others spoke in low voices, sharing thoughts they had not expected to say out loud. A few simply watched the piano, as if it might begin playing again on its own. The woman was gone, but her presence remained. A person who had been near the door earlier finally stepped outside, pausing before leaving completely. They looked back once more, then shook their heads slowly, as if trying to understand what had just happened. Near the center of the room, two strangers exchanged a few words. They spoke about the tune, about how it reminded them of someone they once knew. They did not exchange names. They did not need to. Another listener sat alone, hands folded, feeling lighter than before. Something that had been heavy all day had loosened its grip. They could not explain why, only that the music had reached a place words never could. The piano remained silent. The person who worked there eventually stood up and straightened the bench. They ran a hand across the keys gently, then stepped away without playing. It did not feel right to fill the space just yet. As time passed, people began to leave, one by one. They stepped out into the rest of their day, carrying the moment with them. Some would tell the story later, though they might struggle to describe it fully. Others would keep it to themselves, holding it like a quiet secret. Hours later, the room looked the same as it always had. The chairs were in place. The cups were cleared. The piano sat in its corner, worn and ordinary. But those who had been there knew better. The memory of the music stayed with them. That evening, someone replayed the melody in their head while driving home. They turned the radio off and let the silence sit instead. Another person lay awake longer than usual, thinking about the way the notes had filled the room, the way everyone had listened together. They felt a strange comfort in knowing that strangers could share something so meaningful. Without planning it, the next day, someone returned to the same place at the same time, half expecting the woman to be there again. She was not. The piano was quiet. Life moved on. Still, the feeling remained. Days turned into weeks. The story traveled in small ways. A quiet mention to a friend. A short message sent late at night. Something happened today, people would say. You had to be there. No one exaggerated the moment. It did not need to be made bigger than it was. The truth was enough. Some remembered the woman's calm face. Others remembered the silence more than the sound. A few remembered the way their own chest felt when the melody reached its deepest point. The room itself seemed unchanged, yet different all the same. People noticed the piano more now. Some paused near it, running their fingers over the edge. A few sat down and played a note or two, softer than before. Not every attempt sounded good. That did not matter. The piano had become something more than decoration. It was a reminder that moments do not need permission to matter. Somewhere else, the woman continued with her life. She did not talk much about that day. She did not tell people she had played in front of strangers. To her, it was not a performance. It was simply something she needed to do. At times, she thought about the room and wondered if the piano was still there. She hoped it was. She hoped someone else might sit down one day and feel brave enough to play. She did not expect to be remembered. She did not need to be. What mattered was that the tune had been heard, back in the room. New people came and went every day. Most would never know what had happened there, but now and then, someone who had been present would look up when the piano was mentioned, a small smile crossing their face. They would remember how a simple request had turned into a moment of shared silence. They would remember how a stranger's music had brought them closer to people they did not know. The memory did not fade. It settled. It became part of the place. Years from now, someone might sit at that same piano and play a tune without asking. Maybe it would be rough. Maybe it would be unsure. But someone else would stop and listen, because they remembered that once something unexpected had happened there. And that was enough. The world moved on, loud and busy as ever. But for a short time, in one ordinary room, everything had slowed. A guest had asked for a tune, and what she played had reminded everyone of something simple and true, that even in passing places, even among strangers, moments of quiet beauty can appear. They do not ask to be planned. They do not need permission. They simply happen, and when they do, they leave behind something lasting. Not in the room, but in the people.